All right, here everyone comes. So exciting. So we've got a potentially big crowd today. So we're going to take some time to get all set up. I will be verbally delaying until everyone gets a chance to get in the room, get their audio set up, so on and so forth. So thank you for your patience, everyone. And it's such a delight to see some names I know from the application pop up in the Zoom. If you're just joining us, if you haven't been to many of our sessions, this is a session that is for admitted students, deposited students who are coming to read. So while of course you're not required to turn on your cameras, I think it can be fun to sort of see who your future classmates might be. So if you would like, you are welcome to go camera on. While we're recording this session, we're just going to be recording the speakers. So going to wait another moment or two while a few more folks join us, and then we will get started. Got a few more folks coming in. Welcome, welcome. Okay. Seems to have slowed. Oh, I say that, just kidding. But it seems to be petering out. So I think we will slowly start introducing the session. Thanks for everyone for signing up, for spending yet another chunk of your precious time on Zoom. I know we've all done a lot of that this year. What we're going to be doing today is we'll go through a brief overview of the residence halls, or what living on campus is like, housing, student support in the residence halls. I'm talking about COVID safety in the coming year, and we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. If you have questions, either ones that you've come prepared with or think of during the meeting, I'll ask you to direct them, please, via chat to my colleague, Miranda. Miranda Leon-Hussey is her name. She's one of the co-hosts of this meeting, so she should be near the top of your list in chat. So if you send questions to Miranda, she can make sure that they get to the presenters. She also is an admission counselor. Some of you may have gotten to work with her. So you can also send Miranda, Miranda can also answer some other questions that are not for the presenters if those happen to come up. So in summary, chat is at the bottom of your screen. Send questions to Miranda, she'll get them to me and to our presenters. Briefly to introduce myself, I'm Grace Fisher. I am an Associate Dean of Admission at Reed. If you are from the great states of Minnesota or Hawaii, I was your counselor. If you're not, that's okay. And I think we'll have, and you can use any pronouns to refer to me. I think we'll go forward and have our other panelists introduce themselves. So Clea, will you go first?
Sure thing. Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. My name is Clea Taylor. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Housing in Residence Life. So that means I do all of the operational stuff and all of the assignments and work with our housing portal. I am also in my 11th year at Reed, so been here for a lot of changes and looking forward to welcoming you all on campus in a few months.
Marvelous. Julia?
Hi, everyone. My name's Julia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Residential Education in Res Life. So my role includes oversight of the House Advisor program, all of the supportive stuff that comes into the residence halls to aid in your transition to Reed. And I think that's it.
Super. Madison.
Happy Monday, everyone. My name is Madison Riethman. I am an epidemiologist and I am the COVID response coordinator at Reed College. My title is fairly self-explanatory. I get to do anything and everything related to COVID, which for the past year has kind of been everything. So I'm looking forward to welcoming you guys this fall.
Marvelous. And last but certainly not least, Laurel.
Hi there, my name is Laurel Brown. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of Facilities here at Reed. I oversee the team of folks who keep campus clean, safe, and bright.
Beautiful. Quite literally, it's a beautiful campus. Marvelous. Well, I think Clea will start us off by talking about housing.
Yes, it's a big topic, but it's why you're all here. So housing, where to start? Pretty much all of the housing processes that we do at Reed live in our housing portal. So last I checked, over 300 incoming students had already submitted applications, which to me means it's very likely a lot of you on this call right now have already submitted, so you probably know what the portal looks like. But for those of you who don't, the housing portal is pretty self-explanatory once you get in there, but it asks a lot of questions. So there's some lifestyle questions in there about what time you go to bed, whether or not you want to be best friends with your roommate or just sort of peacefully coexist. Those questions are for you to either match yourself with a roommate or for us to match you with a roommate. Our housing system has really neat software that does a whole bunch of algorithm things behind the scenes and figures out who good matches are. So that's a really big part of what the portal does. You all can look for roommates that are good matches in there yourselves, or if you already have an existing relationship with someone that you know you want to live with, you can select them as a roommate in the portal as well. If you don't pick a roommate, we can assign one for you based on your interests. That doesn't mean that everyone will end up with a roommate though. We have a lot of different types of housing on campus. And so we have undivided doubles, divided doubles, and singles for incoming students. So there are quite a few options. And that's something else you get to indicate in the housing portal as well, what type of room and what buildings you're interested in living in. So there's also in the portal a housing contract and a COVID agreement, both of which are really important and necessary to be able to live on campus. I highly recommend reading through those really carefully and letting us know if you have any questions. So the deadline for that process is June 1st. So you still have some time. But I would say as you go through, just read things really carefully, be in touch with our office if you have questions about the portal, and make sure to get that in by June 1st so we can make sure that you get the housing assignment that you want. Speaking of assignments, our buildings on campus are pretty varied. We have Old Dorm Block, which is a gorgeous building. Like if you look at pictures of Reed, ODB is probably going to be one of the buildings that you see. We also have a brand new, well, pretty new, built in 2019 residence hall called Trillium that is gorgeous. There's a lot of pictures of that online too. And then a whole bunch of stuff in between. We have little houses, we have some apartment complexes, lots of options. That being said, most of our housing is split into class year specific housing. So for incoming first year students, it's actually a relatively limited number of buildings that you have access to in your first year at Reed. And that, Julia will talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but that's to give incoming students really structured support for what they need in their first year at Reed. So the buildings that incoming students can choose from are Trillium, which is our largest residence hall on campus and our newest hall. There's also the Cross Canyon buildings. So that's Chittick, Griffin, McKinley, and Woodbridge. Those all have really big windows, beautiful view of the canyon, really cool common rooms. And then Nato and Sullivan are two other buildings that are designated for first year students. Those all have wings with really cozy common rooms and kitchens that are attached, and also really, really nice views from the upper floors, and a really lovely big common room on the first floor of Nato. So lots of spaces for students to be able to hang out in together, and lots of variety even for first year students. So after your first year at Reed, you would enter the housing portal again to do the room registration process. And then in your second year, you'd have access to sophomore buildings. And then the following years, we have housing that's designated for juniors and seniors, and that would include our on-campus apartments. So there's a lot more info on our website. There's a lot of pictures of these buildings. It shows you what class year is designated for each of these buildings. So highly recommend checking that out to see which buildings you have access to, and look at some pictures before you submit your preferences too. I'm also really excited to announce that this incoming class is the first class that has a residency guarantee and requirement. So most incoming students can expect to live on campus for their first 2 years. We do have an exemption process that's also outlined on our website. So if you, for any reason, think that maybe you don't want to live on campus, check out the exemption policy, see if you qualify for any of the exemption reasons. And when in doubt, just contact our office. We have staff that are working through the summer. We're ready to answer your questions. We want you to feel really well informed before you come and live on campus. So I'm going to turn things over to Julia, but I am around for the rest of the call to answer any questions that came up while I was talking. Thanks.
All right. So as Clea mentioned, we use a neighborhood model, which means that folks are living with folks in the same class year. This allows us to really tailor our resources and our support for you all and the specific things that you might need, as Clea mentioned, in your first year. Our first year neighborhoods are really focused on transition to college and helping you learn about all of the cool resources on campus that you have access to as a Reed student. We also offer a lot of structured support with academics. So in the past, we've used Hume tutors to come into the residence hall on a Friday night so that you can get those finishing touches on your Hume paper before they're due on Saturdays. There's usually snacks involved. So yeah, you can expect a lot of resources to come into the halls with you all versus having to go and find them around campus, because we know you might not be aware of all the cool stuff that we got yet. And then obviously first year communities are all about finding your community at Reed and finding people that you want to spend your time with, connecting folks with clubs, other opportunities to get involved, which segues really nicely into an opportunity for you all to be involved. We started a program last year called the Programming Assistants. This is a student position with an hourly wage that is only open to first year students, fun fact. So over the summer, there's a job matching pool run by the Student Work Office, and the programming assistant position will be a part of that pool. So if you like putting on events for your peers or just want to be involved with the department, definitely keep an eye out for that. In addition, there's 2 different student leader positions that support the first year neighborhoods. One is the house advisor, and so those are folks who work for Residence Life and are there to answer all of the various questions you might have about living on campus. They're also good problem solvers as you navigate different challenges at Reed, and they're going to be reaching out to you for one-on-one conversations a few different times in your first year at Reed, just to check in, see how things are going, and build a relationship with you. We also have new this year OWLs, which stands for Orientation and Wayfinding Leaders. They are also tied to specific residential communities and are here primarily to help you adjust to the academics at Reed. So they'll be leading weekly workshops on various things like how to talk to your professor at office hours, how to draft your Hume paper, how to not procrastinate. I still need work on that one. So anyways, that's about our student leaders in a nutshell. And then we also have professional staff who support the residence halls as well. So each community is overseen by a professional known as an area coordinator. They're a professional staff member that's available to you for anything that you might need help with in your time at Reed. And then of course, Clea and I are also here, and Samara, who if you've ever emailed the Res Life inbox, it's Samara who's answering you most of the time. She's lovely. Definitely have a chat with her if you ever get the chance to do so. And with that, I'm passing it off to Madison.
Awesome. Okay, so I get to answer all of you guys' hot questions about COVID. So I'll start off by just giving a little bit more info about our recently announced COVID vaccine requirement. So many of you might have seen that starting this fall, we are going to require a COVID vaccine for all students. This will likely be expanded to apply to all employees, so all of our instructors, faculty, staff as well. And this is just to boost basically vaccine coverage on campus. We want as much as possible to be able to create a really safe environment so that we can maybe start peeling back some of these other really restrictive things that we've had in place for the last year. We know it's been really hard on students and really our whole community to have to, deal with this really strict social distancing and with really rigorous testing requirements. And so we're hoping by that achieving really high vaccination coverage on campus, we can have a return to something that looks more normal. So this vaccine requirement, like I said, it currently applies for students starting in the fall 2021, but will likely get expanded to apply to all employees. Right now, that includes any vaccine that is approved by the World Health Organization's COVAX program. Right now, that includes Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, which are all available here in the US. That also includes the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is available in many countries globally, but not here in the US. The Sputnik 5, which is commonly distributed in Russia, is included in that. Covishield, which is common in India and a lot of other Southeast Asian countries. In the Sinopharm BBIMP, the Corvi vaccine in China, was just approved last week under that as well. This list is continuing to grow. So the World Health Organization kind of reviews all of these vaccines that are coming out globally, does some things to make sure that it is safe and effective before adding it to this list. But once it's added, that will become a vaccine that Reed says, great, that meets your vaccine requirements. So if you're an international student and you have a vaccine, but you're not sure if it applies to that, just reach out to us and let us know. I man an inbox, which is coronavirusquestions@reed.edu. It's pretty self-explanatory. We get anything and everything related to COVID. So shoot us your questions if you're just not sure if your vaccine will count or if you have kind of an interesting situation. We also have gotten a lot of questions about folks who say, you know what, I don't know if I'll be able to get a vaccine this summer. That's okay. You will still be able to come back to campus. We are planning by August to have vaccine at our health and counseling center. So if you're someone who wasn't able to get a vaccine over the summer, you can come back to Reed and we will get you started on the series as soon as you arrive. Students will be asked to submit proof of vaccine through our student health portal, which is something that students use for all kinds of health related things, to make appointments at the health and counseling center, or to get evaluations. Maybe you're not feeling well, or maybe you want to speak to a counselor. We use the same system for all of this. So it will really be the same process that you use for a lot of other things related to health and counseling services. We will have more information coming out soon about how you can submit proof of vaccination or potentially go through an exemption process. So keep an eye out for more information on that in the next couple weeks. So related to other COVID safety practices next year, like I said earlier, we're really hoping that by achieving a high level or high coverage of vaccination on campus, we can safely start pulling back some of our other restrictions. So social distancing and face coverings, we will still have some restrictions in place with that, but they will be much less restrictive. Classrooms will be back to a relatively normal cap size. Thankfully, Reed is really known for having fairly small classes to begin with, and that is more so that you can have better student and staff engagement in the classrooms. But there will still be some restrictions on social distancing, say at events or other very large gatherings, until it's deemed really safe to kind of go back to some of those. Face coverings as well. We are looking at starting to roll back some of our face covering requirements, particularly among vaccinated people in outdoor settings. I think as long as we continue to progress in the right direction with COVID, we will see that continue to happen where we can safely gather outside without face coverings if we are vaccinated well. But once again, we'll be sharing more with that as kind of we know more at the COVID situation come fall. We will also still have some available testing on campus. It will likely be targeted mostly at people who have been exposed to COVID or those who have COVID-like symptoms. We also may be doing some testing for folks periodically, particularly those who aren't vaccinated, just to make sure that we are able to capture early or asymptomatic COVID on campus quickly. Roommate expectations is another thing that we've been addressing this year because we are obviously going back to a roommate setup, which is really exciting. I know that having roommates in college for me was one of like the top ways that I made friends, and some of them to this day are still my best friends. So I'm really excited that we can go back to having roommates safely. And the biggest piece of advice I have is talk to your roommates beforehand. If you have somebody picked out that you think you want to room with, make sure that you have the maybe kind of tricky conversations about COVID beforehand, so that you don't get into a roommate situation and find out that you are completely different when it comes to your preferences on COVID safety and activities. So have those conversations early, and just start to talk about those important things beforehand. And then lastly, gatherings in common areas and residence halls. This was another thing that had kind of gotten restricted during the pandemic last year. While we're still in the pandemic, once again, we're hopeful that vaccination will really start to hopefully bring us towards the close of this pandemic, and we can have some gatherings again in common areas and residence halls. We are going to be allowing visitors into residence halls from other residence halls next year. So if you live in one residence hall and your friends live in another one, you will be able to visit each other and have small gatherings in common areas and things like that. Of course, we want to make sure that it's safe as well. So there may be restrictions such as capacity in certain common areas, just to make sure that we're not creating too much of a dangerous situation with that. But once again, a lot of these details will really be informed by what things look like at the time and how bad COVID is when we get there. So more to come on that. We will be continuing to communicate about all of our COVID expectations and policies throughout the summer. We do a lot of that on our website and through email. So keep an eye on your email and on the COVID website on Reed's page. And of course, coronavirus questions at reed.edu. That is your go-to place if you have any COVID questions or want to reach out to me. And so with that, I'm passing it off to Laurel.
Thanks, Madison. I just firstly want to welcome you all of you to Reed. I am so excited for you because this is really an amazing place and it's a beautiful campus, and you're going to have so many amazing adventures here. You just don't have any idea. So I am the Assistant Director of Facilities, as I mentioned before. That is the largest department, I think, here at Reed. We oversee the grounds, landscaping, the custodial services, and the maintenance here on campus. And we also have our Environmental Health and Services department here. As that relates to you, we will have a custodian. You will meet a custodian that is in charge of your building. There will be a daily presence there for you, somebody that you will begin to recognize right away, and they are going to be taking care of the restrooms and the common areas and the kitchens. They will not do any cleaning inside of your rooms. That'll be your responsibility, up to your own personal standards, of course. They will service the restrooms 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 10 to 12 and 2 to 4. All of those times and information will be posted for you when you arrive on campus. They'll do daily rechecks on Tuesday and Thursday to make sure that everything is in order. They will also make sure that you have access to paper towels and disinfectant and things that you can use in the common areas or in your own spaces if you're so inclined. And I think the thing I really want you to hear me say today is that we are available to you on a 24/7 basis. We do have an after hours number that you will be provided when you come to campus. And if anything needs attention, you give it a call and we'll make sure to take care of it. That includes anything. It includes anything. So just give us a call, and we encourage you to report issues quickly so that we can resolve them quickly. So if you have a light out, let us know right away. If you have a damage to your wall where a poster came down, let us know right away. Because we want to make sure that you guys stay comfortable and can focus on your studies. So that is our building services team. Our maintenance team is available to you through a work order system, which you can find if you Google reed.edu space maintenance request. It'll probably come up. It's just a little form that you fill out. I don't know if if you have a Reed email already or not, but once you have a Reed email, you can log into it and it'll let you choose your building And it's really important that you give us a room number when you're asking us to come to your place and fix something for you so that we know where to find you. And it's the same drill there. We will come and fix anything that you need us to fix. And that is 24/7. So we're on campus from 6:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't usually enter dorms. The maintenance team does not usually enter dorms until about 10 o'clock in the morning. But if you had an urgent request, we would be there to help you. I think that's everything. Grounds doesn't impact you as much in the residence halls, but you will be benefiting from their expertise when you're hanging out on the great lawn on a sunny day in the spring like we have today. They will disturb you with their leaf blowers on occasion. That is something I can't help, but normally we try to stay out of the way, keep quiet during finals, that kind of stuff. And I think I'm the last panelist to chat at you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laurel. And thanks to all of our panelists for their marvelous scene setting information. Now we're open to questions. So if you have them, if there's anything that you're super curious about, please let me or Miranda know and we can get them answered. I know there was already one student who wanted to know, who maybe had some questions about health insurance. And so Madison, I think you were saying that you can certainly tell them where to ask those questions.
Yeah, so we do have a page on our website about health insurance. Generally speaking, we require that all undergrad students have some sort of health insurance. They will be enrolled in the Reed plan unless they provide proof of comparable health insurance coverage beforehand. I will put the link to this website in the chat so y'all can see it. But if you have questions beyond that, I would recommend reaching out to the Health and Counseling Center or the business office. It's something that the two, offices kind of do together. And they could really talk you through what to do in your specific situation. But this website should tell you what to do from a standard process perspective.
Super. Thank you so much, Madison. Clea, anything to add?
Not to that, but I have a bunch of questions in my chat that I'm ready to go for.
All right.
If we're ready for that. So I'm just going to start at the top and power through them. So I got a question about bike storage. Most of our residence halls either have indoor bike storage in the hall or swipe access to a nearby hall that has bike storage. So Trillium has it, Nato and Sullivan do. There's also bike storage in the Grove, which is really close to Trillium as well. So we work pretty hard with students to make sure that they have either key or swipe access to indoor bike storage on campus. I also know our facilities folks are starting conversations about maybe even expanding some indoor bike storage. I think that's still in early days, but that's a goal of ours as well. So yes, we always encourage students to store bikes inside whenever possible. Makes it less tempting to people who might want to steal bikes, which is sadly a problem in Portland and on campus. So that's bike storage. Another question about what we look at more when folks are filling out their housing application, their roommate selection or their building preferences. If you pick your own roommate, that's going to be pretty much the paramount thing that we try to do for you in your application is keep you with that person. So that becomes the main thing that we're looking at, and your building preferences become secondary after that. So if you and your roommate both pick completely opposite buildings, one of you is probably going to be disappointed because we're going to keep you together and put you in a building that maybe was your preference, maybe was your roommate's. So once you link up with somebody, your other preferences are less considered. If we try to match you up with somebody, we're going to do our best to match you with somebody who also had the same building preferences though. Some questions about finding people's profiles for roommate selection. That one's a little bit more technical. That's kind of hard to address in this format. So I would say if anybody's having specific issues finding something in the portal, email ResLife. Samara, who Julia mentioned before, is our operations coordinator. She's our portal guru. She's really good at answering questions like that for folks, especially if they can send screenshots. So that would be my recommendation for that one. Grad Guard, which is renter's insurance that there's an option for in our housing portal. That is not required, just recommended, and it doesn't have to be Grad Guard either. I know lots of people already have insurance policies where someone going off to college can just get added to that, just add renter's insurance. So you might want to explore whatever insurance your family already has. But Grad Guard seems to be pretty well liked by folks who have used it at Reed. So just a good idea. You know, if a sprinkler pipe ends up bursting because you maybe accidentally forgot and put a hanger up there, or if you're studying and you leave your laptop somewhere and it gets stolen, there's things like that that Grad Guard can help cover that I just think is good practice. So it's not specifically a Reed company. They have their contact info on their pages in the portal. So if you have specific Grad Guard questions, I would recommend reaching out directly to them.
While you're on that topic, Clea, one of our guests just asked, what is the direct deductible on that, if you happen to know?
Oh gosh, I don't off the top of my head. I'd have to go into the portal to look. I'm sorry. We actually try to be pretty hands off with the renter's insurance stuff because it's not a Reed component. So we really do try to direct students to them for questions, but it's, oh, thanks, Julia. Julia put some info.
Yeah, I dropped their FAQ page in the chat. It looks like you set your deductible based on your plan.
Super.
I got a question about skateboards or electric scooters on campus. Skateboards are fine. I've seen plenty of people skateboarding. Electric scooters, I haven't gotten that question before. I suppose it depends on how fast they go. That seems more like maybe a community safety question, as they're the folks who kind of monitor how quickly people are speeding around on campus.
You do see during move in, move out, graduation, little signs telling you how many kilometers per hour you can go with a translation to miles. I can't remember what it is though. It's like 6-10 miles an hour, maybe something like that. So scoot responsibly.
Always good advice. Question about if all first year buildings have common kitchens. Yes, all of our first year buildings have kitchens. They are usually shared in a wing or a little pod or group of students. So maybe anywhere from 15 to 20 students would be sharing a kitchen together. So they all have multiple kitchens, except for the Cross Canyon buildings, which are smaller. So it's still roughly the same number of students sharing a kitchen, but there would only be one kitchen in those buildings. And then to what extent does Wi-Fi strength differ between first year buildings? Fortunately, we have not heard about very many Wi-Fi issues in any of our first year communities. And I actually know that our folks on campus who are in charge of the Wi-Fi are doing some big projects this summer to make sure that it's better in some of the less good areas on campus. So I know that that is also in the works. Oh, also advice about choosing a single versus a double. That's such a tricky question. It's so much about your own personal preference. As Madison was saying, for some students, it can be a really great way to make friends, to have a roommate. It's someone who's going to help get you out on campus, or a built-in buddy to go to commons with or to orientation events the first couple of weeks that you're on campus. It also means sort of double the friend groups. If you're making your own friends in classes and so is your roommate, it's a great way to get to know more people. If you also want to just have more time though to recharge, and that you think you'll get out and about and meet people, but then just really want some alone time in your room, then maybe a single is a better choice. I will say Reed is so unusual in that we have so many divided doubles, which I think is sort of the best of both worlds, where so a divided double, you have one shared door to the hallway, but then an interior room. So one roommate gets the further back room, which means they have to walk through the other roommate's room to get out into the hall, but there's a door. So it's almost like you have your own single, but you also have a roommate. So I think that that's a really nice option for students. Sorry, just trying to keep up with the chat. There's a lot of questions. Different identities and features of the dorms. That depends so much on the group of students that ends up living in them. So let's see, for first year students, Trillium, as I said, is one of our it's our newest building, our newest residence hall. That building, let's see, features. That building has an elevator. It has a really nice big common room on the main floor. It's got lots of little nooks and crannies. So it has different study rooms throughout the building. It's also got just little nooks with just like 1 or 2 chairs where students could sit and study just by themselves or with one friend. Each wing has a small kitchen that's then attached to a common room. And then all the bathrooms in Trillium are single user only. So it's like individual stalls. You're not going to be sharing a bathroom space with a bunch of other students at the same time. What else about Trillium? Julia, am I forgetting anything special about Trillium that you can think of off the top of your head?
The 4th floor has a media room / balcony.
That's true. The balcony is really nice. The views from up there are beautiful. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out the pictures on the website. Their Trillium is really pretty. The Cross Canyon buildings are more of like a mid-century modern kind of vibe. Lots more brick, big floor to ceiling windows. Those are right in the canyon. So they just feel very green when you're inside. And kind of funky little common rooms that have fireplaces and sort of retro furniture. I find communities in those buildings are usually really, really strong. They're not very big buildings and people get to know each other really well. And those buildings in my time at Reed have had pretty strong identities depending on the students who live there. Nato Sullivan typically has a reputation for being a little bit more quiet. Yeah, the first floor common room in Nato is really big. There's a pool table and ping pong there, really big sofa and TV. So that's a really good place for a lot of first year students to hang out. And then those all have wings sort of similar to Trillium where it would be a shared common room and kitchen that like 15 to 20 students would be sharing. And so those wings can get a little bit more of an identity depending on who the students are who live there.
Yes, Julia mentioned in the chat the window art of the Cross Canyons is a pleasure.
Yes, that's always fun to walk by. Students paint on those windows and we have some really talented students. There is not a way to specifically ask for a divided double versus an undivided double. We don't have very many undivided doubles on campus, so that's actually been a fairly recent thing that's even an option for first year students, and our portal does not differentiate between those two at the moment. We typically try to make sure that our divided doubles are all filled first before we move to undivided. Some of that will depend on the class size of your incoming class, whether or not we fill all those undivided doubles. Another question about how much is too much to bring to the residence halls? That's a great question. A lot of students bring mini fridges. I think that's something that many of our students like to have. All of the kitchens do have full-size fridges, and so students are welcome to store things in there, but I know it's nice to have accessibility to your own little fridge in your room and also more assurances that other people won't walk off with your food. Things that shouldn't be brought, anything that might overload our circuits. So we don't let students bring microwaves to their own rooms, in part because if every student did that and then we're using their microwaves, we're gonna get fuses blown and power outages and things like that happen. So no microwaves and nothing that has any kind of burner or heat source that can just be, that doesn't have an automatic shut off, because that's obviously a fire hazard. So don't bring those things. Otherwise, I think my advice is always start with less, because you can get things from home when you go home over break. You can get family to send you things. You'll see that first year students usually show up with a lot of stuff. And by the time a student is in their junior or senior year, you notice them coming to campus with a lot fewer things, just because it's a lot to move it around and take it home with you over the summer or figure out storage. So I think less is more is usually a good approach when deciding what to bring to campus.
And there's also a thriving free exchange community on campus too. So lots of stuff you can pick up from other students.
Definitely.
I just want to.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Grace.
If I can briefly break in, I got a question directly from a student about who's planning on deferring or taking a gap year. And if you are interested in deferring or taking a gap year, still a good idea to fill out the housing form, because you never know. And just in case you didn't end up doing that gap year, we want you to have housing. And then, of course, if you do end up being approved for a gap year or deferring admission to next year, then we would let housing know, and then your application would go away. But definitely do submit a housing form just in case. And just a friendly reminder that gap year proposals, if you're interested in taking a gap year, please let us know by this Saturday, or May 15th. That's all the gap year things I had. Oh, if you already have plans with a future roommate and decide to take a gap year, it's probably nice to let them know. I would recommend that. But back to you, Clea.
Yep, I've got more. More have come in. So let's see, how far away are the residence halls from classes and commons? Obviously, it depends on which one you're in, but campus is not that big. I would say most of our residence halls, especially for first-year students, you'd be at commons in 2 to 3 minutes, and classrooms about the same, maybe less, depending on how fast you walk. So yeah, not that far. Everything is pretty close. Students can definitely ship things to campus ahead of move-in day. We have a mailroom on campus. They usually have a start date where they say this is the day when you can start having things delivered, and they don't want things ahead of that date. So I would check the website or call the mailroom to confirm before you start shipping things. They don't want to keep things all summer, but they do let you ship things to campus before you arrive. I got a couple questions about instruments, which I am not the expert in. So in terms of storing larger instruments or keyboards that are available, students can certainly bring instruments. Obviously, you need to be conscientious about how much noise you're making in the residence halls, but that's something you can talk to your community about when you arrive. I don't know about storage. I feel like talking with folks in the music department probably would be a good idea, because we don't have specific things like that in the residence halls. Questions about the 2-year residency requirements. So that means that pretty much the first 4 semesters that a student is going to be at Reed, they're expected to live on campus. Reasons why a student might not that would be approved: non-traditional age students, so students who are 24 or older, students who are married or have children, students who are veterans. There's a few more reasons listed on our website. That's the type of thing where if you qualify, if you fall into one of those categories, you would let us know that in the housing portal and say that you're requesting an exemption, and then we would review the information that you shared in your application and then be in touch. If there's a reason that isn't listed there, that's just sort of one of the automatic reasons why you may be exempt, there's also a box for students to just write in a reason. So if there is a reason that's not listed, just share information with us, and we may have a little bit of back and forth to figure out why living on campus wouldn't work for you, or see if there's some other on-campus resources we could offer that maybe would make it work. But then we'd be having a conversation about it. So one of the other reasons is also for local students. So if you are already living in town or living off campus with family, that would be another reason why you'd be exempt. So again, a lot more information about the whole process on our website. Storage, that's a great question. So until pretty recently, we had storage available on campus. It was a pretty imperfect process because we didn't have enough storage for everybody who wanted it. So it was first come, first serve, which got really messy, huge long lines of students waiting to get stuff into storage. We also were only able to store things in standard sized boxes. So additional furniture or equipment, anything like that, we weren't able to store. So we are in the process right now of working with an off-campus storage company that we're going to partner with, who will be coming to campus to pick things up for students and making it disappear and then bringing it back for students later when they need it. So a lot more details will be coming out about that in the next few months. We're still finalizing our contract with them, but I think that's going to be a much better way to meet student needs. And there will be a lot more options for students storage wise than there used to be, which is very exciting. Someone wants to confirm if they leave the roommate section blank, they will be assigned a roommate. Not necessarily. It'll also depend on whether or not you have requested singles or doubles, and it will depend on what all your fellow incoming students have requested as well. A lot of it is just sort of, if everybody's requesting singles, yeah, we're going to assign some of those people a roommate because we need to, and we need to fill our doubles. If everybody is requesting doubles, we may need to split some people up and assign singles if that ends up being necessary. So it's not a perfect science. A lot of it depends on what all your peers are putting in their applications as well. Roommate changes. Yes, so if something happens during the year and you don't want to live with your roommate anymore, that is definitely something our staff can work with you on. So the staff that Julia was mentioning, the house advisors, the area coordinators, they're there to work through that stuff with you and your roommate. So an HA might do a sort of informal mediation and just have a conversation with you both to help you work some things out. The area coordinator might step in and talk through some problem solving with you, or try to help you figure out if you want to repair that roommate relationship and stay where you are in your community, or if a room change is really necessary. So there's a big room change section on our website too that answers a lot of those questions.
Clea, I'm going to jump in so you
yes,
can have
please.
a breather.
Sure.
I got a question. To drink some water, maybe. There you go. I got a question about mixed gender housing. So all of our housing at Reed is gender inclusive. So there is no split by floor, by building. So everything, including roommate choices, you can choose a roommate of any gender. So if you're choosing a roommate, gender is not a factor. If we pair you together, you would be paired with somebody of the same gender identity. So that's about our gender related housing options. And then some other things related to that. At the beginning of each academic year, communities meet together with their house advisors and talk about expectations and use of shared spaces, especially restrooms. And so folks are able to express their comfort around gender identity in restrooms at those meetings. And we encourage folks, if they have concerns, to talk to their HA before the meeting so the HA can advocate for you, so you don't necessarily have to be the one saying, I want this or I want that. So hopefully that answered your question, whoever sent that.
I've got more. Someone asked if housing is decided on a first come, first served basis. It is not. Fill out your application by June 1st, then we look at the whole pool altogether. So as long as you get it in by the deadline, doesn't really matter if you were doing it on the first day or the last day. Someone else asked if they need to lock in a roommate or if we will look at who they've requested or who's requested us. We won't look at that. The requests that you are doing are yours and yours alone. So Residence Life would just look at the algorithms of how compatible you are, not who you've requested. So if someone requests you and you think they sound cool, accept their request and then you two can be roommates. If you don't lock somebody in, you may not get assigned somebody that you were already talking to or that requested you already. Some questions about animals and pets in the dorms. We do allow small caged animals. And then in the on-campus apartments, students are allowed to have one cat or a dog. That excludes emotional support animals, which can live anywhere. So that would have to be something that a student worked with disability and accessibility resources to get an accommodation for, to have an emotional support animal. So if anybody has any accommodations needs, I would definitely recommend talking with disability and accessibility resources sooner rather than later. They get a lot of requests during this time of year and it takes them a while to work through them, especially for students who need to provide a lot of documentation. But for students who do have an approved ESA, they're welcome to live anywhere on campus in the residence halls with students. Yep, and then it looks like Julia posted the pet and animal guidelines too. So I would highly recommend folks take a look at that for more details.
I have a question.
Yes, bring plants. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, please bring plants. I got a question, and I don't know if Julia or Laurel or Clea would be best to talk about this, but a little bit more on the question of housing accommodations. If a student has a disability or accessibility resources sort of accommodation for a specific housing amenity, does that does that determine where they're going to live, basically?
It can. So it depends on what the amenity is. So for example, if a student needed air conditioning, we have very few residence halls on campus that have air conditioning. So if we weren't able to assign a student a room in one of the res halls that has air conditioning, we'd work with facilities and the student to get an air conditioner installed in their room. That's easier in some residence halls than others. So Trillium, for example, has these really big, beautiful floor to ceiling windows that are incredibly challenging to install an air conditioner in. So that kind of thing might dictate what sort of building that student would end up in. We really like to try to make that be as much of a conversation as possible with the student and with facilities and with residence life, just to try to figure out what needs actually need to be met, and then what the student's preferences are, and then how we can make it work to the best of our ability. So yeah, it might impact what building a student ends up in, but hopefully we could all talk about that together.
Thank you. This is like getting into some building nerdy stuff, which I really enjoy. But are there certain dorms that are literally quieter, not because of who lives in them, but because of the construction?
Ooh, Laurel, do you know the answer to that?
I am afraid that I do not know that. I have to confess that I've only been at Reed for a little over a year, and so I don't know the personalities of these buildings. I mean the physical personality, not the communities within. I would say that the most noise complaints that we get are not from like the neighbors next door, but I know that the radiator buildings like ODB, Animan, if you're very sound sensitive, the radiators, they do ping, chatter. I find it to be a charming, comforting noise, but if you don't, it is not something I can make that sound stop. I cannot make that sound stop. That's the only noise related thing I can think of that's specific to a building. Yeah, I can't think of any other complaints about noise besides the radiators.
And those buildings that Laurel mentioned are upperclassmen buildings. So by the time you become eligible, you will have had time to scope them out and figure if they are for you. As someone who moved from Oregon to Chicago, I learned to love the radiator. Love. Let's see. Plenty of questions more about animals on campus. There are so many community animals in that there are like celebrity dogs belonging to different faculty and staff. The Reed Quest, the student newspaper, even has a feature on the dog of the week. So you will get to know them and love them. Some more questions about air conditioning. And can you talk a little bit about Oregon's weather and AC and why many of our buildings might not have AC?
Yeah, air conditioning is not super useful in Oregon for a lot of the time that students are living on campus. So it might be really hot for a couple of days around move-in, or maybe a little bit later into the fall if we're having a hot fall. But then spring, it takes a long time to warm up too. I mean, right now it's still only getting up to the low 70s. So most of our buildings stay pretty cool. So yeah, our Grove building those are the only buildings with air conditioning. Trillium was built, and Laurel, you can probably explain this way better than I can, but Trillium was built not with air conditioning, but with a way that the air circulates that keeps the building really cool, which is great. And students have said that they haven't had any heat issues there so far. So most of the time that students are living on campus during the academic year, campus is not that hot.
Just to follow up on the Trillium, it's got a passive cooling system to it that is has a very low carbon footprint. So in Oregon, we are, well, in in the Willamette Valley, at least, we're really fortunate that we can utilize those kind of technologies and don't have to rely on the air conditioning.
It's wonderfully temperate.
I've gotten a few more questions directed straight to me. Trillium's windows do open, not the whole entire thing, but part of the window opens. So yes, students can get fresh air in there. Someone else asked about the likelihood of being able to continue to live on campus during junior and senior years. That's a great question, and we are still figuring that out. Trillium was just finished in 2019, and then COVID happened and our demographics on campus really changed very rapidly. So we don't have a lot of data yet on what it looks like to have, well, and then the residency requirement is new. So we don't know exactly what it looks like yet to have first and second year students required to live on campus and what the appetite will be of junior and senior students to continue to live on campus. This year, I'm really excited to report that all of our returning students who submitted housing applications were offered a room. So we didn't have to have a wait list, which I think is great. But unfortunately, I think it's going to take another couple of years before we know for sure what that looks like. I do think that most juniors and seniors who choose to live on campus, though, we will have space for them. Another question about roommates. Can you choose multiple people, or if two people select each other, is it a guarantee they will room together? We cap roommates at 2 people because we have doubles. So if someone requests you and you accept their request, you two are now roommates. And in order to accept someone else's request, you would have to cancel your relationship with that first roommate. So you can't accept multiple people. You can really only have one guaranteed confirmed roommate, and that's the person that we would do our best to place you with.
I can chime in if you want to break here, Clea. I did get one question about common areas on campus. So I kind of touched on in residence halls, but we do have a lot of other shared spaces on campus. Of course, the sports center, which is looking to reopen again this fall. There's the GCC, which is kind of our student common area, which I just found out has a pool hall in the basement, which is pretty cool. So a lot of campus spaces like that are shared. We are planning on reopening those potentially with some restrictions depending on the space, just to make sure that it can be done safely. But yes, for all of the spaces that you're seeing on campus, I would say with maybe very limited exceptions, should be reopened to some extent in the fall.
Will the language houses be back to being language houses? Do we know?
I can take that one. So in the interest of planning for this year and not knowing about visa statuses, as well as planning for all these new processes of bringing on residency guarantees and guaranteed housing for sophomores, we unfortunately were unable to dedicate physical residence hall space to the language houses. But we're excited to announce that Allison, who works in our international student office and works on study abroad type stuff, is working to get language scholars here who will still be able to offer the types of programming that they did when the houses existed. And we are re-envisioning the program over the course of the next academic year to relaunch it in 2022. New and exciting version.
Awesome. And language houses are not available, have not very often been available to first year students anyways. So hopefully by the time you would be eligible, they will be back. Clea, do you have more? Got a couple more minutes.
Someone asked about security. That's a great question. I don't have time to go into a lot of it right now, but we do have a really great community safety department on campus who staff campus 24/7. There are always community safety officers who are present. There's a dispatch desk that is open 24/7. So that person is fielding any kind of calls or questions that are coming in at all kinds of hours. Campus is pretty well lit. There's also some emergency call boxes around campus if students need them. And then we also, in student life, we have a really robust on-call system. So there's always an area coordinator on call. There's a dean on call. There's a community safety manager on call and facilities folks on call as well. So really, I think our safety net is pretty great. And during orientation, there are multiple sessions where some of those folks will be talking about that in more depth. But if you have specific questions in the meantime, Gary Granger is the Director of Community Safety and can answer anything you want to know about safety on campus.
Well, we are running out of time and also vocal capacity, I think. So the biggest of shout outs and applause to Clea for heroically soldiering on, and to all the rest of our panelists as well, Laurel, Julia, and Madison. Thank you to Miranda for helping us direct questions. And Miranda has just put in the chat an email address, res.life@reed.edu. Is a great place to send any questions that didn't get answered today or that come up over the next month. Remember, you have until June 1st to submit your housing form, so you've got plenty of time to really dig in, do the research, figure it out exactly what you're looking for, and you won't have any concerns about, where you are in the queue, since we don't do housing that way. So please do reach out, make sure you get the information that you desire. And of course, coronavirus questions can go to coronavirusquestions@reed.edu. And if you're not sure where your question should go, email your admission counselor or admission@reed.edu, and we are the digital switchboard of the college here. So we're happy to direct you to whoever is best able to answer your question or get that information for you. Otherwise, any final words, other fellow presenters?
Thanks everyone for making time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. We're really excited to have you on campus. I can't tell you how much it means to be back to full Reed capacity. It's going to be a wonderful year. So thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon. And there are some upcoming future events on, will be a student panel, a session on disability and accessibility resources, and other sessions. So stay tuned, keep an eye on your email, and we'll see you all very soon. Have a good afternoon.